Thank you very much. And no speakers? Any speakers? Okay. Board colleagues, questions, comments? Ms. O'Grady.
Thank you so much, Mr. Byrd and Dr. Natras, for sharing with us what's coming down the pike. I'm going to be going through it with a lot of parents as I have a rising freshman. So, and this will be the first time I do it in this way. So that's great. I wanted to ask, in my previous experience, seniors look forward to senior experience, but it seems from my experience, I think it comes at the end of their senior year. Is this going to change a little bit? Will students be able to have more exposure to the outside and not have to wait till the last few weeks of school to get it?
Want me to take it? Yes. In the past, it's been the last 3 weeks of the school year, their senior year, and they would come back and share their experiences with their classmates in a culminating activity. But because of the reduction in requirements, we're going to be able to offer these opportunities throughout the course of it. Well, as a student matriculates through school, not just their senior year, but throughout their time in school, we would hope that we would be able to engage externships from 6th grade through 12th grade.
Thanks so much. I know that that's been a highlight for students I've mentored and for my own students. So I'm excited to hear that kids will be able to get out and do more things in the community and help their communities in ways that they find are meaningful to them. And I'm also excited to hear about the opportunity for our students to be more exposed to teaching careers because as I've heard from Dr. Murphy, Virginia is looking at potentially a teacher shortage. And so I think it's exciting when kids can come back and teach in the schools that they actually matriculated through. So I appreciate you concentrating on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Talento.
I just wanted to clarify that for our rising sophomore, rising juniors, and rising seniors, they are under the old standards. So they will have, if you're an advanced diploma, will need 9 verified credits. And they will continue with the current models that we have for senior experience, which are slightly different at all 3 schools. Is that correct?
Yes,
Or actually, let me rephrase that, because I was thinking as Ms. O'Grady was speaking, that maybe we start transitioning to newer models, and that would be exciting. But if you could engage a community in that, because I have a senior now, but I know that perhaps the rising sophomores may have an opportunity, or even juniors, depending on how quickly we can implement that. So if you could elaborate a little bit on that, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
So I would say a couple of things to that. You're exactly right in that the transition will be starting. I think the key piece that you won't see as much as for the sophomores, juniors, and seniors is the credit piece, right? Those requirements will stay in place. The other 3 elements of the new graduation requirements related to the profile of a graduate, related to the career exploration, and then the focus on the 5 C's, we're already starting to build that in. So Ty had spoken to Sarah Putnam's work around career exploration. We're starting to look at that with our middle school curriculum documents now, and some of the high school experiences around internships and various job shadowing experiences and other elements will be in place even for students if they're not formally part of the graduation requirements. We're also building the 5 C's into our curriculum documents with a lot more of the project-based learning focus, and this summer when we do our work it will be with ELA, social studies, and math. So all of the things here will start being built into that, even though it's not a requirement necessarily, because it's good practice, right? It's great for all of our kids to participate in a lot of the things that are in these graduation requirements, and there's no reason not to move forward on them. Sure.
Yeah, Ms. Van Doren.
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. Byrd. On slide 8, this is a very confusing slide. If you have students at one point in the school, this is accurate, and it's not accurate for other students. I think the difference between a standard and a verified credit is confusing to parents. So I'm going to, again, request that there be footnotes on this slide, because whether we like it or not, PowerPoints are now used as note-taking. And people will go to this on the website, and you could potentially have somebody who thinks they only need 5 verified or credits to graduate, incorrectly believing that. So we don't want that to happen. So I would suggest footnoting this and explaining the difference between a standard and a verified credit, because it's really confusing for families. It's really, really confusing, and we need to look at these documents as standalone. I don't believe that's the way PowerPoint was invented, but it's the way it is now. So let's please define standard and verified and explain that this is true for what years, which students,
Okay.
because that could be a problem. But this is great, and thank you very much for all your work.
We can absolutely do that.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, as everyone has said. I have a question/comment as well. Actually, it was on the same slide and the one before that. I wasn't able to see the number. So actually, on the slide that Ms. Van Dorn was talking about, first of all, as you noted, I think the number of credits has not changed. Is that correct?
That's accurate. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then I think it's the slide before that where and under the high school piece, you sort of talk about the things that you have in place. And so there's really nothing in these requirements that are new to APS, is the message. And so what I concluded from that was a little bit different than what I'm hearing my colleagues conclude. So I want to confirm where this is headed. I kind of concluded that not much has to change in how we do high school. We might want to, we've always talked about wanting to have more internships and things like that and develop our programs more. But I'm not under the impression that that you're telling us you're really changing how we do high school.
There may be a change in format and trying to bring a bit more consistency to our approach. As Ms. McGrady mentioned, they're different at every school, and we would like to maybe bring some consistency to the way we offer opportunities for our students to engage in externships. Wakefield has a senior project. Externships are available. So whether or not we're going to go that approach with each school is to be determined, but we would like to bring some consistency to it.
So some thinking about that, looking across the different programs, figuring out how to do it better, maybe offer more opportunities in some of these things, but there's no fundamental shift in how we're doing high school.
No, ma'am.
Okay? Oh, Dr. Murphy.
And I don't want to confuse the matter with this presentation and some of the dialogue that happened leading up to this, but there are some things that occurred prior to the state board adopting this and us moving forward with the graduation requirements that I think still could play out. So the first one, as a result of my involvement with the SOL Innovation Committee and also then leading the subcommittee on high school redesign, we wanted to make sure that we embedded the 5 C's into all aspects of the curriculum. There was a heavy thread that said getting children ready for careers and workforce was critical, and all we continue to hear is about the 5 C's and taking away an emphasis, so to speak, just solely on students having rote knowledge or content. So I think while Mr. Byrd may not have elevated it to to that degree, I think what he did say, though, is looking at how we embed those 5 C's across all the curriculum areas, and I think that'll be something that will be developed. The second point was, with the committee work, we wanted to reduce the number of standardized tests. That was accomplished, I will say, to some degree, not to the committee's level of recommendation, and we wanted to also move in the direction of performance assessments, which, by the way, we do a very good job with. I want to commend Kathy Hicks and her entire team, but that's evident across all of the social studies curriculum areas where they have those performance assessments. I think our advocacy in Arlington for that, by the way, can be very helpful to the policymakers down in Richmond, and I think they need to continue to hear our voice on that. There was some reservation, I have to tell you, about substituting some of the standardized tests for performance assessments, but I think we've made some inroads. I think the final piece is, and we have to remember, the most western part of the state of Virginia is to the west of Detroit. So this is a very diverse state with a variety of different economic bases. I think we do have a nice baseline for internships and experiences outside of the classroom. I think we can build on that, and by the way, I think we can lead on that. And so I think this really gives us the venue and the opportunity to kind of go in that direction. I still think we can reduce the number of standardized tests. that students earn verified credits. I think that's something we need to continue to talk about. We haven't gone far enough. And I think having students demonstrate knowledge beyond just bubbling in a test sheet is something that we need to continue to explore. Again, we are on the forefront of that. So you've got this kind of balancing act going. This is as far as we've gone today with what Mr. Byrd has shared. And then how do we continue to move forward with some of the things that the group has talked about? And not only the Innovation Committee, but across the state, different groups are talking about that. I think the board's advocacy with policymakers really is sort of the next venue that we need to approach. So a little bit more than you perhaps wanted or needed, but it kind of gives you the whole balance of the picture and the backdrop and some of the thinking that's behind why we're here right now.
We can go all night.
Sure. Let me, yeah, we're still discussing here. So to summarize what you're saying then, I mean, and what my point, I guess, was really the structure itself is not really changed. High school students, most of high school students are going to go and take 7 courses, you know, across.
English, math, social studies, and science will stay.
But what
consistent.
you're describing, though, is that within those courses, there's going to be a little bit more of a framework of the 5 Cs and a different way of thinking about what they're doing in those courses.
And it's incumbent upon us to measure it, to measure how we're doing that and
Yep.
report that to the state. So again, it's exciting for us to be creative in ways that we haven't been in instruction for
That's
some
one
time.
of the Cs.
Yes.
You gotta make
there
sure that
go.
you do the 5 Cs as you
We're
do that.
absolutely- we're gonna
Your
model
work
that
as well.
for our
And I
children.
know we've got comments, another round of comments coming here. So Ms. Van Doren.
Dr. Murphy, I believe also connected to this is the change in the law and then our policy that does not require a certain number of hours per class. So I just want to comment on that because it does open up the possibility of students doing internships and getting credit or learning a language somewhere else and coming back. And some of that is already happening. So it
Right.
does potentially loosen up chunks of time during the day for I'm leading you to give more information about that because I'm very excited about that.
I'm going to turn to Dr. Natras, but you're right. The sort of the Carnegie unit type of approach that we all experienced of 140 hours of seat time, we do have we have a tremendous degree of flexibility. Dr. Cannon, I'll only say to your comment that yes, while it may look similar to what we currently have, there are beginning to be some degrees of freedom with student choices. And I think that's evident with some of the programs that we're also starting at the secondary level.
So, Ms. Van Doren, you're referring to the policy that we passed this summer, end of June, because we can now waive the 140 seat requirements for standard credits. So it does give students a lot of opportunity. And so, Dr. Cannon, when you say, will this change the structure of high school? Maybe. To some degree, when we think about that flexibility around seat time, right? We're very used to students have to be in 7 periods a day in these courses because of the hours required. And now we're talking about ways to have more competency-based opportunities while looking at embedding the 5 Cs. And when you think about some of the things we're seeing, for example, at Arlington Tech around project-based learning, and students are in a cohort and the project that they're doing in their Algebra 2 class is directly related to what they're doing in their English class and is related to something that they're doing in a history course, are all interrelated, which is different than the structure that we have seen for high school over the last century, right? And so I think this does provide some degrees of flexibility, some degrees of freedom, and to really think about what are those kinds of instructional things that really engage our students in different ways. So it could be that they're doing projects like that for 3 periods, then they're going and doing an internship, and then they're doing something else. So we may see some of that shifting. It's not going to be dramatic, it's not going to be immediate, but I think we're going to continue to have a lot of conversations around that, particularly with some of the flexibility that is provided, both with the reduction in assessments, the performance tasks that can be looked at for some of the verified credits, and that policy that actually came before this to really speak to, here are some of the things that are exciting possibilities for our students. So,
Ms. Talento.
I did want to continue a little bit of the thread of the conversation that's being had at the dais. So I think all of us here have had high school students, but this is really affecting parents who possibly have not had high school students at this time. And if they know any families who have had high school students, I'm sure they're very nervous about the rigor and the time and the stress that we have in our high schools. And so I do want to reiterate a little bit, and please correct me if I am translating this incorrectly, that 26 credits divided by 4 years is 6.5 credits a year. You don't have to do it in your head. I did it on a calculator. It's confirmed.
It's always six.
But what that means is that if we're taking 7 classes every year, we have extra space senior year. Our current students don't always have that flexibility due to the 9 verified credits, making sure they're passing tests, due to the lack of internships and externships in the current change and flexibility that we've offered that we didn't offer before. I don't want our new parents thinking that their kids are going to have to take 7 credits their senior year and find a way to do an internship. And for us who are already there, recognize this is great, it's flexibility, but for new parents, like, well, wait a second, how is that going to work? And really what it has done is, because we've reduced verified credits and because we're looking at some of the information that you shared about integrating and exploring a lot of the 5 Cs, it will allow our students to look at different ways to manage their senior year, possibly their junior year, depending on how they lay out their high school path. Is that correct? Or can you
Yes.
clarify that if not?
And I would think about things like internships, externships, work-based experiences as part of a course. So when we talk about standard credits, it's not necessarily that I'm going to do my traditional course, right, for my block in that 7 period and then do an internship on top of. It might be that I'm in a health and PE course and I have this great internship, or an econ and personal finance course, and I can get the information on the standards and things that I need through my internship. And maybe I'm in that class 3 days a week, in my internship 2 days a week, and it's not on top of, right? It becomes a very integrated approach, and I think that's what the message can be to families who are like, oh, it actually does allow for more integration and hopefully less of that anxiety around how do I keep accruing all of this throughout my high school career. Yep.
Gets even more flexible. A lot of our students take some of these courses in middle school.
Yes, correct.
So
That's
you could
exactly
actually
right.
free up your
They're-
senior year
yes.
quite a bit. If
In summer school, and we have all
and
kinds of opportunities.
summer school, you can
to build
take
that. That's
courses
right.
for new
Yep.
courses for credit in summer as well. You can
Yes.
you
Yeah.
you can just graduate early, Ms. Talento. Yeah. Okay. I think we're.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I do want to thank
Oh, we're
Sarah
excited
was
about
here
this.
earlier, Putnam, and Pam McClellan, and they both had to leave, but they have worked really closely with Mr. Byrd on rolling some of this information out. So just want to thank them in
Definitely.
absentia.
Definitely. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more monitoring item, and it is an update on human resources. Dr. Murphy.
Yes, let me turn to Dr. Christy Murphy, and she has quite a team with her here this evening. That's going to give you a human resource update, and I'll let her introduce them. And I just want to say thank you to all of them for being here. So, Dr. Murphy, I'll turn to you with your presentation.
All right, thank you. Good evening. I first and foremost want to thank you. 2.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to come before you and present a human resource monitoring report, and here I am again. Presenting it based on some opportunities that I have been given from each of you to lead this wonderful department. I'd like to say that while I'm going to give you the overview tonight, I think your questions would be better answered by the individuals who are actually on the ground doing the work. So Ellen Kennedy, our Director of Employee Relations, Christy Lation, our Benefits Administrator, Aaron Wells Smith, Director of Talent Acquisition and Management, and Tara Wooldridge, our Director of Employee Assistance, will have the opportunity to answer any follow-up questions that you have. So, as I said, for the last 2.5 years, we've actually been revisiting our practices, looking at our work, and trying to say, what are we about? As we continue to grow, what are we doing for our employees? What is it that we believe? And together we came up with our mission, our purpose, and we are truly committed to recruiting and investing in and sustaining a high quality and diverse workforce. It's very important for me to also be mindful, and I think to our team, that we also believe in building meaningful relationships, respectful and inclusive, Because for us, while our instructional staff and our teachers are our largest population, all of our employees are educators to our children. They are all seen as teachers to our children. So we want to make sure that we are inclusive in every manner so that we can inspire generations, which is actually our brand. It's very important in HR to have a brand. As I shared with you, we have 9 employee groups, of which our largest employee group is actually our instructional licensed staff. This not only includes our classroom teachers and our content teachers, it also includes our school psychologists, clinical psychologists, school counselors, substance abuse counselors. It's anyone who holds a professional license with one of the boards that are part of Virginia, so the Board of Education, the Board of Audiological Services, Occupational Therapy, and so forth. Our second largest group is actually our assistants. Third largest group is maintenance. And the order that you see is the order in which defines our population of our employee groups. And here's another breakdown so that you can see we currently have 2,826 instructional licensed staff. And you can see our assistants, 677, maintenance, 333, and so forth. One of the things is why we have our employee groups. For us in human resources, we always talk about what's our human capital, because that's actually what is the cost to the organization. And there are 2 groups that individuals don't often realize that we actually support as an organization, but that we also support from human resources. And that is other, that encompasses a very large group of our hourly staff, our substitutes, the school board, such as yourself, and the superintendent. We also continue to take care of our retirees. Oftentimes when we celebrate them and thank them for their years of service, everyone else says goodbye, but we don't. We continue to keep in touch with them. And on this next slide, you'll actually see that after our instructional license staff, the next largest group is that other group of hourly, and substitutes, and our retirees. We have close to, as you can see, a little less than 1,500 of retirees that we continue to support. So oftentimes when I'm asked the question, how many employees do we have? And I respond when I say like over 8,000, people will say, is that really true? And I go, yes. And then they say, I thought we only had 4,000 or 5,000. That is our employee group. This is the actual cost to the organization. As we get ready to enter 2019, which is a really big year, especially as I go around and meet with different groups about our principal selection process for all these new schools we're opening, we look back at the data from when we started in 2009 at our numbers of our human capital and compared them to right now where we are today. As you can see, it's almost between about 1,200, 1,300 employee growth that we've seen since 2009. One of the things that is interesting and I think is also relevant is, as you can see, we've grown in our instructional staff, which is comparable to our student growth. As we come to the close of a strategic plan, Goal 3, which we have happily owned, and we're excited to see the new outcomes, Dr. Nattrass, of our next goal. There were 3 main focuses for us, and one would be teacher qualification. As you can see, we've always measured our teacher degrees by having master's or doctoral degrees, and we actually exceed the national average on the number of teachers with a master or doctoral degree. We also measure what we consider APS highly qualified. When No Child Left Behind came out in 2004, there was a part where it talked about teachers being highly qualified. That's being defined as being having a certification in your content area. So we've maintained 98%. The 2% on any given day when we submit our report to the state, it may be that one teacher that we realize is teaching a world geography class and they only hold endorsement in social studies, and you have to have a very specific endorsement for world geography. So our talent acquisition team calls up the principals and we start working to address that. Our staff diversity, on the left-hand side, you'll see that it's our staff. On the right, it's our students. And I think that while we've made some gains, there continues to be a need to closely monitor this. National data shows very similar trends, but I think one of the things about the strategic plan really looked at the overall staff diversity. But as far as I know that the question is always saying, well, what's the teacher breakdown within that? nationally. Currently for APS, our teacher population is about 10% Hispanic, 10% African American, and we exceed a little bit of the national average and even the state of Virginia by almost 7 or 8% in regards to the population of Hispanic teachers and African Americans. It's still an area in which we need to grow, and I think that that's something that we'll continue to look at in this next level of planning. Staff satisfaction, this is actually data that comes out of the Community Satisfaction Survey. As you can see, we've been consistent since 2012. National data, according to the Society for Human Resource Management, says that staff satisfaction is around 89%. About 30% of the population of employees are very satisfied with their job. I'm included in that. And about 50 are satisfied. So we're close, but I still think that there's room for growth. While it has gone up a little bit and gone down, it's been consistent in between 84 and 86, and I think that there's a lot of room for growth. Department of Human Resources. I can never say thank you enough for the opportunity to lead this department. I remember my very first budget question that came from Nancy Van Dorn, and she called and she asked a question, and I said, well, I really think that's a finance question. And she goes, no. You're not responsible for the children anymore. You're responsible for the adults. So I expect you to answer it. And that never left me. And I realized that that was my job. And so I have taken it to heart, and I've owned it, and I continue to own it. So within the Department of Human Resources, we have 5 offices. Our first office is Acquisition and Management. I want to, again, always have the opportunity to publicly thank you for supporting us. We used to have one recruitment coordinator who was responsible for bringing on all of our teachers, but we realized that there was a gap in our services, especially for recruitment on the operational side, for information services, for facilities and operations. So we consolidated some positions. We brought some offices together so that we'd have a more robust team of recruitment, as well as now we're working on the management piece. When individuals come on board, we want them to sign that paperwork and say, I made a good decision to join APS. As you can see, one of the things is that this office is responsible for the recruitment and the staffing of all of our schools, our departments, as well as summer school, which is very interesting in the summer because while everybody is preparing for the new school year, we're also staffing for summer school at the same time. Our benefits, I had a wonderful conversation with Christy Lation. I said, benefits is kind of dry. What can I say that's exciting? And she said, no, it's great because at the end of the day, this is what helps us to recruit our employees. This is what helps us to retain our employees. How do we support them so that they can continue to live a work-life balance, knowing that in the future, when they retire, that they are taken care of, but also the things that they need right now. So as you can see, this is a pretty robust list of some of the benefit offerings that we have. And they continue to work every day to make sure that not only our APS employees, but future employees, as well as our retirees, are feeling that we are supporting them with customer service and helping them understand something in some ways that can be complicated. Payroll. I have to say I have a special place in my heart for payroll because it could be on a Thursday night at 11:30 and they are running payroll while everybody is at home waiting for that check on the 15th and 31st. They are working Saturdays, they are working Sundays, they are working all hours of the night to make sure that the job gets done. One of the things that they're also responsible for that I don't think a lot of people think about is that the additional compensation opportunities falls under the responsibility of payroll. We have about $1.1 million in stipends, and so that's part of the additional compensation that the payroll department also is responsible for making sure happens. Employee relations, I love this slide because I said, Ellen, I am there with you. You are not by yourself. As you can see, we only have one director of employee relations, and they are really responsible for some of the core foundations of the work that we do: employee engagement, recognitions, conduct, our policies and procedures, performance management, classification, and compensation. And so I do my best to support her, but she is an office of one. But we all wrap our arms around her and try to help out as much as we can. And then employee assistance, we have the wonderful opportunity of partnering with the county government to have our own internal employee assistance program. There are very few that are left. And so they are responsible for helping with the assessments and referrals for when we have employees who have challenges, whether it's professionally or personally. It's a place where they can go to get help. Coaching and counseling, they too have partnered with employee relations and benefits to look at our engagement and our wellness initiatives. They also, for the Arlington Public Schools side, help us to maintain accommodations under the Americans with Disabilities Act. They also are responsible for our OSHA and our Department of Transportation testing. So we have some celebrations. We're really excited because I think it was 2 days ago that we received notification from the state that we are the top school division in the Commonwealth to have the highest number of teacher employees who have enrolled in the voluntary contribution of the Virginia retirement system. So they actually want to do an article on us, and they want to know what are we doing to increase that voluntary enrollment. The hybrid plan is a very complex plan, and if you have questions, I told Christy I'm going to do the hand move, and she can respond to that. But it's really important to us that we make sure that our employees understand retirement, understand what happens after your job has come to an end and you've served your time giving in service. What can you do to make sure that you are still taken care of? So we've also wanted to make sure that our employees come on board and understand our benefits package and what's available to them. So we've tried to use different modalities, and so we've developed a benefits guide as well as videos. We're still committed to diversity. In spite of the national average, that's still going to be our efforts, and so we've actually expanded our partnerships with very targeted universities to really try to recruit teachers in those areas in which we know that we're having a challenge. We've increased some of our partnerships with the historically Black universities as well as the Hispanic serving institutions. In addition, we've started different cohorts, our Esau Hill cohort and special education, to address those hard to fill positions. We've increased our presence on social media. That's very important for our millennials. They're used to filling out an application via their phone, or looking for job applications or job openings through Facebook, which they're not using as much as they used to, Instagram, Twitter. So we've really increased our presence with social media, and we're looking forward to doing a little bit more work in that area, LinkedIn pages and things like that. We consistently, in spite of a teacher shortage, maintain almost a 97, some years it's been a 98 fill rate on the first day of school for our classrooms. Those positions that we have not filled are typically not classroom positions, but more related services, maybe psychologists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, but not necessarily a classroom teacher. WNL may have a chemistry class, and the teacher is only able to teach 2 courses of chemistry rather than 3. So the principals have done a great job of looking at their staff and saying, okay, how can we move things around? And we continue to have our assistant to teacher program. One of the things that's very important is growing your own. And so it is important to us to work with our instructional staff, our assistants, to say, what can we do to help you join our teaching workforce? As I said, it's been important to us to also provide some consistency and transparency, but we also want individuals, when they come on board, to have an experience that they have chosen the best school division. They have a lot of school divisions to choose from. We are surrounded by, I think, 4 of the top largest school divisions in the country. And so we've started having employee orientation sessions, and so we wanted to actually show you a video of what they experienced to try to show them that they really did select the best school division.
Arlington Public Schools is proud of its legacy as a top-performing, fully accredited public school system. Our success is grounded in a firm commitment from our community and staff that believe and strive for excellence for our students. We have built a solid foundation for our students to achieve and succeed as they progress through their educational journey here in Arlington Public Schools. The cornerstone of this success is the high-quality instruction we provide and the investments we've made to develop the best team of employees who support student learning and growth. To ensure that APS remains a school division of excellence, we continue to focus our resources on priorities that have been the hallmark of what makes Arlington a great school division. We are confident that together with our phenomenal team of teachers, instructional leaders, support staff, and families, we will continue to make it happen for our students every day. Your dedication to our children will help deliver and support the outstanding results we have achieved together. Let's hear from some of our teachers and support staff.
I love working for APS because it's a place where students come first. And as an educator, I love it because innovation and risk-taking are celebrated. And if you have an idea and it's going to benefit kids, you are almost always going to be given the thumbs up.
I don't like working for Arlington Public Schools. I love working for Arlington Public Schools.
I can't think of another county where you'd have this much freedom to explore the things that kids are really interested in.
Keeps you young, keeps you fresh, and just love working for APS.
I'm always going to new workshops. I'm always learning new things. They're always encouraging us to collaborate, and that's one of my favorite things.
The people, the students, the families, it's like things I love to when I get to interact with them on a day-to-day basis. It's nothing but positivity.
Despite this accent, I have lived in Arlington for almost 40 years. Raised 3 children here. They all had the great privilege of going through the Arlington Public School system, which put them in great shape for the rest of their careers and their ongoing lives.
I used to be a student in Arlington, and I think that's a great place. You have a lot of people from everywhere.
I mean, there's people from all walks of life with all different kinds of experience, and they have so much to offer. Us, the school districts, the communities are so diverse. They're filled with so many amazing families, amazing children.
So I love learning from students. I love the constant challenge of teaching. Working with young folks is the best. They're funny. They're all geniuses. They have so many skills. They have so much grow. I mean, it's wonderful.
I enjoy working with the younger kids. They give me joy. I love to see the progress that they make throughout the year.
Thank you, Jeremy. So moving forward, while we celebrate our accomplishments, we still have a lot of work to do. As we get ready to open up new schools and our student population grows, our employee population grows. And so making sure that they are well taken care of is our primary responsibility. One of the things, so we have a couple of goals that we have. We have a lot, and they keep telling me, Christy, remember you said change takes 3 to 5 years, not 3 to 5 minutes. But they've been great about it, and I look forward to coming back year after next and presenting some more of this information about the wonderful progress we're making. We realize the need to develop a comprehensive communication framework. We really need to work on how we are recruiting and making sure that our website is reflective of opportunities. It really shouldn't be difficult, and I know I've heard it before, to find how to apply for a position. We recognize that that is a challenge, and we need to work on that. We want to develop more how-to videos and guides so that our employees can also feel that they know where to go and get information. And also with our administrators, we are looking now at how long it takes to bring someone on board or onboarding. And we're realizing that it's not a time frame in which we feel is acceptable because we are in competition with a lot of school divisions. And if we don't do it in a timely manner, we could lose an employee to another school division. So these are the things when we say communication that we're working on. Employee engagement, we've heard the comments of morale and climate, and those things are part of employee engagement. Gallup says employee engagement is having employees who are enthusiastic about coming to work. Our HR consultant says that you want to have the 3 S. Say, you want them to say the best things about your organization. Stay, you want them to want to stay here for a long time, and you want them to strive. And as we strive for our students to have excellence, we want to make sure that we are that our staff are feeling the same support with their own professional and personal growth. There's a big project that Leslie and I continue to dream about one day, and that is redesigning our human resources information system. It is what drives everything that we do, right, Raj? And so we are looking, as we grow as a school division, I think one of the things that I can make relevant is that oftentimes we hear how many pages is our pay plan. I think it's almost 25 or 50 pages. That's partly because of the way our human resource system is set up, that we have a specific HR pay plan inside of our system for each one of those pay scales. So we'd like to work to make that a little bit smaller and less complicated, because again, that is one of the things that individuals will look at when they're saying, I want to come on board. I want to know how much I can make. Well, if you can't read our pay plan, that's not very helpful to you. So it's a bigger project that we look forward to bringing and saying, we need some help. We want to continue to work on creating financial education and wellness for all of our staff. We're very proud of the results with our teaching population, but we also want to have those same results with our support staff. And lastly, we are grateful for the opportunity that we had to really look at our compensation package, as well as the support that we've received to update our job descriptions, what we call our class specifications. We've come close to finishing our E and P, our exempt and our professional, but now we're going to start we're looking at the jobs classifications or descriptions for our assistants, our clericals, and our teachers, and then moving to our support staff. It is our goal to have all of this completed by the winter of 2019, and then we will be on a nice 5-year cycle, so that every 5 years we're doing a market study. Every 5 years, we are updating our job classification and vacancies, and we think that that will also help as our staff are looking at professional learning and knowing what they need to do in order to continue to grow. So that is our monitoring report, and if you have any questions, they are happy to answer them.
We will first go to speakers. So, Ms. Elliott.
We have one speaker, Mr. Josh Volb.
So before I begin, I must recognize that the speech is clouded by the terrible shooting in Parkdale, and that my heart is heavy that as a country, we have failed to put the systems and methods in place to prevent this terrible tragedy. To quote the highly rated news source, The Onion, which runs the same headline after each one of these senseless failings of our society, quote, "No way to prevent this, says the only nation where this regularly happens, and maybe this time will be different." Good evening, I am Josh Volb, the chair of the AEA Compensation Committee. I am sure there will be lengthy discussion about this presentation. If I were given 20 minutes, I could probably offer a much longer rebuttal. First, I hope the board will question the satisfaction numbers, and more importantly, what questions are used to get to such a generic graphic. While many are satisfied, there is a long way to go to make sure your employees feel like the valued professionals we claim they are. And to the 2,000 employees who are the other, who are they? I want to thank APS for putting all scales in a 5-year compensation review cycle. Through continued step increases, constant review of the scales, and perhaps someday an index cost of living adjustments, one, you'll put me out of a job, and APS will never again find themselves in a recruiting disadvantage that they have been in for the past few years. It is not a secret that our pay is not as competitive as it used to be. Finally, I want to point out the continued emphasis on flexible professional development. It was briefly mentioned here, and I hope that this board continues to monitor and push for the professional development that meets the needs of APS, but is meaningfully chosen by the staff and is done in a way best suited to and respectful of the employee. The mantra continues for that of professional development should be something you do and not somewhere you go. And I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, board colleagues, questions or comments? Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's very full of good information. Can you, let's see, can you go to slide 7, please? What's on slide 7? Yeah, there we go. So this food and nutrition thing is curious, because since 2009, enrollment's gone up, I don't know, 6,000.
I think it was 20,000 in 2009. It's about 27,000.
Okay, so 7,000, and all the rest of these categories have increased, as one would expect, but not food and nutrition workers. Is that figure right?
It
It's gone
is-
down?
It is. It's correct that the number has gone down. Many of the employees who are in our food and nutrition services actually are hourly employees. So when we say other, it's a combination of different groups, including our hourly staff, our substitutes. So many of the staff members are not in that specific category, but have moved to more hourly support.
So there are food and nutrition workers, food service workers that
Correct.
you would find here in the other category. Is that what you're saying? I see. Okay, so
There are also extended day workers who are hourly. There are some of our transportation, our bus drivers, who are also in that category.
okay. But all the rest of those categories have gone up since 2009. That's why I was curious about this. And can you elaborate a little bit more on what's in that other category? Because that's quite a large category. I mean, the second largest after instructional staff.
It's a large category. We have about 600 substitutes. We have a number of, again, bus drivers, bus attendants, extended day staff, food and nutrition services. We also have hourly teachers who come back, some of our retirees who come back and provide support to our students. So some of our individuals who manage the pool, some of our lifeguards, the REAP program.
Okay, so
You want to come up? Okay.
you said some of the other category are retirees. So how does that differ from this, the retirees
Good question.
group at the bottom?
So this slide is really related to the human capital, which is the cost of the organization. That 1,492 are the compensation that we provide, or the health and benefits for our retirees when they leave. So APS still pays a portion of their health insurance.
Okay, so they are not employed. They're not, those retirees are
No.
not back on some,
No.
Hourly,
No, if they come
few hours
back
a week
for
basis.
hourly work, they would be in the other category.
okay.
But that line down at the bottom where it's retirees really is representative of the benefits that we continue to provide when staff leave and they still have are part of our APS health insurance.
Gotcha. Can you go on to slide 11, please?
Yes. I'm there.
Oh, thank you. And so how was this? What were the questions here that gave us a 86% satisfaction?
Some of the questions are, I feel respected, I feel valued, am I pleased with the compensation package that's offered, salary? I feel supported, I have the materials that I need to do my job.
And this came from the community satisfaction survey?
Yes.
And that survey is given to APS employees, or?
Yes, it is given to APS employees, and I think it's every other year.
Okay, isn't there a section that parents are filling out, or students or something?
Yes.
There's more than just APS employees answering that survey,
Correct.
right?
Correct, but this is representative of the staff portion
This is
of it.
just the staff responses
Yes.
to those satisfaction questions?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. On slide 14, yeah, this is something I go through at work a lot. Because well, let me ask you, how many of these benefits are available to everyone?
So I'm going to turn this over and let Ellen and Christy answer some questions, because again, I really do want you to have the opportunity to hear from them.
Did you want me to go through each one? Because that could be tricky. So we have benefits eligible positions. So the first thing is the O scale or other are non-benefits eligible positions. So let's put that. And so then you have your benefits eligible with your scaled employees. So in general, the list of our benefits, the health insurance, et cetera, would be for in the benefits eligible positions for the scaled employees.
So that's, what was that, number 2,000 something, the O?
Correct.
Can't find it.
The O scale.
7.
Let's do something.
2,000, yeah. So they are not eligible for these benefits, right? Any of these benefits?
Workers' compensation, everyone's covered by workers' compensation. You want to add, what else would I'm going to make you add? For other, say O scale. Right, our 403B and 457 optional supplemental retirement program, anyone can put money into that. And the commuter subsidy would be available to all. That
Okay.
is it.
And so for the rest, the ones who are eligible would be the rest of those categories we saw on slide 7.
Correct.
Instructional licensed staff, extended day, maintenance, clerical, et cetera. Do you know what the utilization rate is? I mean, how many people are taking advantage of this?
That's going to vary by category, so we'd like to come back to you with specific information. I wouldn't
Okay.
want to.
Okay, good, thank you.
We do have that data available.
Okay, good. Okay, and my last question is on slide 22. Yeah, and can you elaborate a little bit more on the classification study and the plan for the 5-year? Does this mean that A, G, T, C, D, MX scales are going to be adjusted to the market the way we are doing now with the
So-
other scales?
So there were two components to the compensation and classification study that we undertook between 2016-17. One was to look at the market rate, where our salaries compared to the market. The other portion was to look at our job classifications or the job vacancy announcements. And those had not been updated in a significant amount of time, I would have to say. We have some pretty old job descriptions. And so what we needed to do was ensure, and best practices for human resources is always that every 5 years you're looking at those job vacancy announcements to make sure that they are relevant. And that they actually accurately reflect the work that you want our staff to do. So the compensation piece, it would be our hope with the right funding that in 2022, we'd go back and do another market study for all of our employees. But right now, our focus is really to bring all of our job classifications, our job vacancy announcements up to date.
And that's what you mean by classification, is the description, the job description
Yes.
and the vacancy announcement?
Right, we have a classification, and from the classification, we take information to create a job vacancy, which we put on the website.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. O'Grady?
Thank you so much. I want to just say thank you very much for the presentation. Dr. Murphy, I wanted to say I do appreciate you acknowledging that we can do better when it comes to a diverse teaching community here in Arlington. We are a majority minority school district, and I think it's important for students to see people who are like themselves, and for other students to actually see people who are different from themselves in leadership experiences. So I appreciate all the work that your staff's doing to try to reflect diversity in our teaching staff. I have 3 questions, and the first question has to do with the staff's satisfaction data that you shared. And while you mentioned yourself that we can improve on where we currently sit, One of the things I note is that when Dr. Cannon took over, she mentioned that this would be the year of the staff. I wanted to know, what do you think what we can do to ensure that this really is the year of the staff, and how will we know if we did it right?
So thank you for that question. I don't think that it just stops with this year. I think one of the goals for us is really to work on a framework so that we know what we're doing and we have some measurable outcomes to our framework. I appreciate the staff satisfaction survey, but we also took a look at some of the questions to say, is it really getting to the heart of what we need to get to? So I think we'll continue to look at that survey and have more conversation, but research has said the greatest contributors to employee engagement is first and foremost respect, respectful treatment. The second one is compensation, and the third is actually a level of trust between your employees and senior leaders. And so I think one of the things that I am excited that we had the freedom, as Judy A.B. mentioned, to try was to allow our teachers to telework. They have been asking for that, to say treat us as professionals, respect us, and allow us this opportunity. And I do believe that we had really good feedback with that, and I think that that's something that we'll continue to look at. We hear Mr. Forbes just spoke also about the professional learning and having a different type of experience. So those are things we're going to continue to work on. The superintendent had some focus groups to find out what are individuals really looking for as far as employee engagement and how we can make that happen. But I also think that we've had some recent work with our employee advisory committee that I'd like to have Ellen just mention. Mm-hmm.
Could you expand on the telework? Because I know many people in different occupations. When you say telework, they may lock in. But what does that mean exactly for different sectors of our staff? I think explaining that would be helpful.
So as you know, we just finished one of our grading periods, and traditionally our teachers would have to, our students that might be a student holiday, but it's not a holiday for our instructional staff. So they would come in to do their grades, and so they have been asking to have the opportunity to actually do the grades from home. Since we have a lot of things that we do online, they said, well, why can't we do our grades at home? And so we've revised our PIP to allow that to happen. So, and do you want to talk a little bit about the Employee Advisory Committee?
We have been trying to do more to empower that committee this year. So some of the stuff we've done, we're trying to do an update and news check for all employees to understand what their representatives are doing on the committee. And we've also created new mailboxes and sent out to everyone on the scale for our support staff group. So all E scales got an email, all D scales, all X, that said, hey, here's a new mailbox address. If you have feedback you want to give to your EAC member, use this mailbox. And then they've been encouraged to please go in and check. They're trying to create a little bit more of that back and forth communication so they understand that they do have these representatives as part of that voice. We want to continue our work and engagement and the staff satisfaction survey, starting with that committee as well, to sort of hear their ideas in a similar fashion on how they think we should best address engagement going forward.
That was a good answer. Thank you so much. I like the direction we're going. And then I had two other questions, and the first one was, I just want to commend you on seeing 125 assistants working in the pipeline to become teachers. That's incredible. And I just didn't know whether or not we have a similar program for students who are in college who are studying teaching, who need to do kind of maybe a year of student teaching, and whether we welcome them. What do we do?
We do. We do have teachers that do need to go back and do student teaching. I just spoke with a gentleman at one of our high schools that needs to go back and do that. A lot of times they can do it on the job, which is great. So they continue to do their work. We provide a mentor for them, and then they can get the student teaching credit through their university. In this particular situation, the gentleman was not able to do that. So we are going to be using the Barcroft schedule. So he'll be able to get in 4 weeks ahead of when we start, and then he would only have to take the leave. We do have a leave for people that need to go out and do student teaching. So he would then be able to do the 4 weeks before he even comes back to school, and then do the 2 weeks once he's back in and take the leave to complete that. So we did come up with a leave policy to allow our staff to do that, whether it was teaching staff, assistant staff, anybody that's going back to become a teacher. So the leave policy, I think, was in state, we came up with that about 2 years ago, that allows people to take up to 12 weeks of a leave. We'll hold their position for them so they can student teach.
And what about kids who are in college who are studying teaching? Do we ever give them the opportunity to come in and maybe an internship?
So what we're doing is we're strengthening our partnerships to be able to allow people, especially APS students, to come back. And so what we're trying to do is better track where our students are going, especially those that are going into education programs, to say if you would like to come back on a break and do some teaching during summer school, or if you'd like to come back as an assistant as well during the school year, we hope to be able to make those connections so that the students can come back and do that. What we find is that many of our APS students do want to come back to the community they were educated in, and that's a really great resource for us.
Great, thanks, Erin. And the last question was, I was at a PTA meeting just this week, and one parent brought up that she heard that we might be in need of more substitutes, and whether or not we do, and if we do need more substitutes, what is it that you're looking for in a substitute?
Well, so we had an interesting, they're all laughing, and it's good. It's good that they're laughing at me. They're laughing with me, I guess. We did a really wonderful study with a consultant group called Substantial. And they came in and did a data dive with us, because what we were hearing from a lot of folks was that we didn't have enough substitutes, that there were positions, obviously, that were going unfilled, and that was a concern for us. What we found is we currently have about 654 subs. What we found was that we did have what the national average would require us to have as far as subs to be able to cover the openings. What we found was that our absenteeism was something that we probably needed to take a look at. When you look at where our absenteeism is nationally, we're hovering right around numbers that are something that we may want to take a look at. What we found was more so that our pool of substitutes, 654 of them, 20% of them were covering almost all of the positions. So what we've learned is we need to go back and engage our substitute pool and really figure out what we could do to get them to expand the days that they're working, to expand the schools that we're working at. So it's a multifaceted issue that we're going to come back and take a look at. We always are looking for more subs. Substitute teachers need to have 60 credit hours. They need to be able to come into classrooms, hopefully within their content area. We'd love to have folks that are endorsed and already have teaching degrees that would choose this as an option because it currently fits with their lifestyle. So always looking for great substitutes. Do we need more? Always. But what we're finding is our pool is really where we need it to be. We probably need to look at engagement to really make that pool a little bit more active in picking up positions. And then there's some other issues we may want to take a look at as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Murphy, before I go on to the next questions, it would be helpful to introduce the staff that are here with you so we know who's answering what.
I'm sorry, I had introduced him when we started, but I again. So this is Erin Wells-Smith, our Director of Talent Acquisition and Management. Her office is responsible for the recruitment as well as making sure that all of our classrooms and our operational positions are filled. This is Christy Lation, our Benefits Administrator, Ellen Kennedy, our Sole Director of Employee Relations, and Tara Wooldridge, our Director of the Employee Assistance Program that we share with the county.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Now we'll know why you're pointing to different people when we ask certain questions. So, Ms. Van Doorn?
First of all, I want to say thank you. It's a very comprehensive report. We have lots of questions. I know that there are some citizens who are asking questions, and I've suggested they direct them to you to make sure that we're able to answer them. I am a substitute teacher junkie. I was a substitute teacher, and I absolutely loved it. I went back and taught in my old school district, like APS students come back and do. And I spent that I parlayed that into a full-time teacher of foreign languages for almost 8 months, and it was a great opportunity for me. But one of the things that made it a great opportunity is that I was welcomed and treated as a colleague and a professional. And what I hear routinely, and I just was at a church meeting last weekend where a young man who was searching around for what he might want to do was, it had claims he had been to just about every school in Arlington and felt very unwelcome in his work. And I hear that repeatedly, and I think we're missing that an opportunity. So if in addition to crunching the numbers, we could also do a qualitative look at how we are treating our substitutes and maybe expecting more of them. I was expected to contact the absent teacher and have a lesson plan. I had to actually teach. And I think people would like to do that, and if they have that opportunity, they may very well then could ease into a program in which they end up being teachers, especially, there are a lot of young graduates who are looking to see what they want to do, and I think substitute teaching is great. I loved it. So I hope that we don't just look at the numbers, but also the quality maybe in another round of a look at it.
We actually did take a look at what you're referencing. We did do interviews and went out and spoke with, as a part of our data dive, with substitute teachers, with students, with sub-coordinators, and with administrators. And you are correct. What our substitutes said was that they really were hoping that we could provide for them more staff development. So we did start to do a more robust orientation that included mini seminars on things like discipline in the classroom, about classroom management, because those were areas that they said that they were struggling in. We also learned from the substitutes that they really appreciated the support of the sub-coordinator at the school. So that's the person that greets them, that's the person that gets them started on their day. And what we did was we took a look at that experience and tried to make it a little bit more universal across the school division. We trained the coordinators on the types of things that we wanted substitutes to have when they came into the building: maps, bell schedules, those kinds of things. So we started round one of that training, and we hope to expand that this year. So I agree with you. We did hear from substitutes that they did need more support, and we're going to continue to move forward with some of the recommendations that came out of those interviews.
Thank you, and maybe just helping everybody understand the value of all of our employees, but our substitute teachers, because they play an important role and can really be an asset to us. So the other question I have is about morale, and I know that Dr. Patrick Murphy has been doing some work with the Arbinger Company, and he's on, I think, the second book and going to the third book. And I've heard, as I'm out and about, that some principals and some schools, some teachers have looked at that as a way to really have great conversations within their schools around issues that people really want to talk about and get at. Just wondering what the status of that, I would call that a morale effort, what that might be, if you wanted to comment on that.
Sure. We've been talking about Arbinger coming in, and they do a variety of different things with the books that they have. We are on the third book in the series of 3, and we've had various book talks with principals and teachers and staff. What I'm thinking about doing once we go through the third book is to cycle through and go through the books again, sort of getting it out there. I think it's catching some momentum as people become aware of the different books and how they're kind of structured. I think the main idea that Arbinger tries to get across is that look at people as individuals as opposed to looking at and in groups. And what I'd like to say is walk a mile in my shoes and take from my perspective, and I think we've heard that very clearly and loudly tonight. Coming up for the administrative conference later this summer, we're looking to have workshops also that are part of that and embedded into that. We did do a workshop, I would say late fall, if my memory serves me, with some of our administrators, and we're going to be talking about replicating that for another group of administrators and teachers because they found that to be very helpful. And then finally, I know we have the it's not Odyssey of the Minds. Why am I escaping? Festival of the Minds coming up this summer again, and I envision that we will have some workshops or embed those activities there as well. So it's kind of something that's building and growing as we kind of move forward, but I think the books have been a great vehicle to kind of get the message out in the land.
I just want to thank you for that, because I think one of the things I keep hearing from our staff morale-wise is how much is coming and how much is changing and how much is being demanded of all of us. And I think we feel that on the board, the administration does, the teachers do, and we have to work together on that, because I don't really see much change in that happening at the speed at which things are changing in our society. So how we grab hold of each other and do that together is really important. So I really appreciate that, because it's going to take all of us to do it together.
Absolutely.
Ms. Talento?
Thank you for the report. I thought it was very, very good and very informative. I have a couple of questions. I was curious, I'm looking at your employee assistant program and slide 17 and employee relations slide 16. And it seems that they might slightly overlap. I'm trying to figure out where, we had a speaker today that spoke about feeling bullied, and I can't recall if she was speaking for herself or for her collective group of, she was a supervisor and she had staff, and it sounded like she was speaking for a few of her employees as well as herself. And where would she go, and where would she go and feel safe? And when I looked at slide 16 and slide 17, it was unclear to me, if I were her, where I would go to say I'm having concerns or issues with my new supervisor or with the new school leader. And I think sometimes the fear is, having worked in a support staff system for many years, your fear is you don't want to be reprimanded or blackballed by the person that you're serving under. You would like actually to improve the relationship or just be acknowledged or respected as the fact that you are providing a support system to their leadership. But when you go and you complain, you know that that person is going to be spoken to, and then what happens? Mm-hmm. And then where do you feel safe? And she spoke publicly, but I've had other people in our school system come and say, where do I go? I have this concern. I don't know what to do. Where can you guide me? Many times I've directed them to AAA. Sometimes I've tried to figure out the chain, well, have you gone to HR? I know you have EAP. But as I'm looking at this slide, I don't see something strong. And how are we providing that information to our employees? So I don't know if you have comments on that. Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
So I think that your first question about the overlap, there's a lot of overlap between employee relations and employee assistance. I would say for any employee that is feeling bullied or harassed, that really your first direct contact would be, we do encourage you to talk to your supervisor, but oftentimes we recognize that people are feeling that way from their direct supervisor. Right. So the safe place to go is really employee relations. That's where we meet with the employee and we kind of assess what's really going on and how we can support. There have been situations in which we have involved employee assistance because it may be a bigger issue where you have to bring everyone together, and there might be a couple of sessions that you have to sit down and say, this is what I heard from you, this is what I've heard from you, and how do we meet on a common ground. But one of the things, and it's up for tonight, and my group that I was talking to this morning, the Collaborative Professional Strategies team, they've been asking, where are we with updating our workplace violence policy? Because we really do need to clearly identify in our PIP what are those processes that are available to our employees. So they have been asking for it, and we've been working on it. And I told them, I said, we're going through a new policy method, and so it got put on hold, but I promise you it's on the agenda tonight, and I pulled up board docs, and hopefully I think they'll speak to it tonight. We do understand that that is a great need. So the sooner that we can work together in collaboration with AEA, and our administrators, which is part of our collaborative professional strategies team, to develop a clear PIP that outlines what people can do and where they can go. And I think that that really is the gap right now, in that individuals don't feel like they know what to do. And then depending upon what we find out, it may be a situation in which we need to involve employee assistance. I know that we have one right now where I called Tara on the weekend and I said, I really need for you to sit down with some employees and an administrator and try to help them to work some things through, because they're going to be together and they've got to figure out what's the common ground and what do you consider to be disrespectful and what do you consider to be offensive, so that they can hear each other. And I think that's a lot of the work that also Ms. Van Doren talked about in one of the books from Arbinger. The outward mindset is really stepping outside of yourself and saying, I wonder what that person feels. And I wonder how that that person is taking the information. I know Ms. Gant and I recently had a meeting, and we said you shouldn't walk into a situation where it's two supervisors and just you. That's not going to make you feel that you are empowered. So these are things that we hope to expand on when we talk about employee engagement. I think that not only do we want our employees to be enthusiastic about the work, but we want them to feel safe, and we want them to feel that if something is bothering them, that they can speak up and there will not be some type of retaliation.
Okay, so thank you. I'm so grateful to hear that we are working to improve that. The other question I had was, we referenced the other group, the hourly employees, and we also had, so bus drivers. We have hourly bus drivers as well as bus drivers who are on the salary. And our hourly bus drivers don't have access to any of the benefits except the basics that were mentioned. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I guess what I'm trying to understand, due to the bus driver shortage, and I think we had a person speak today, and we've had, I think, a bus driver speak in the past, and there seem to be concerns in trying to figure out how to support, again, another support employee. What are we doing to, first of all, I guess the question is, how do you become a salary bus driver? Are we working on that? I feel like there's a gap there, and we keep hitting this.
Right, we're almost there. We're almost there. I think it was probably 2 years ago, and maybe we're in our third year of ensuring that we have enough salaried contract positions to match the number of routes that we have.
Okay.
And so we really need to make sure that all of those contracts are filled. And then we have our hourly staff, which we have some procedures in place to look at where they are and start awarding those contracts in addition to, but we will still have that pool, very similar to a teaching substitute pool. You have a bus driver substitute pool that you have to keep going. So I think the more that we can have contracts that match our routes, that is how we continue to recruit and retain our bus drivers.
Okay. And then finally, you mentioned the human resources information system.
Yes.
Do you have a possible price tag on there, just so that as we look into the future, if this is one-time funding, how can we support our HR who's working so hard to improve the morale and all of the questions that have been posed to you today?
I think that that's something that I can confidently say, Ms. Van Doren, that really is, I'd have to turn to Leslie to answer that as far as the cost, as well as Raj, who would be the individual who would have the expertise on that system. So I think that is something that we are looking at. We're constantly having conversation, but we do need to have a system that can support our growth.
Okay, so I would be, if you can provide us that number at some time, that would be, I just think it'd be important to know if that's a need, where it could fit, whether at any point in time, now or in the future. And you don't have to have the answer now, you can come back, but.
I understand that. I just wanted to say that we don't have a number, but it's not something that we can just find.
Okay.
We'd have to go through the whole procurement process in order to find out what that number is.
I
We could
see.
probably get an estimate.
I see.
But we also need to have the people in place in HR and in finance and in information
So it's a-
services.
it's a
To be able
project.
to actually implement that
Okay.
system correctly. Right now, I think would not be a good time for either finance or the human resources department, but I will let Dr. Murphy speak for herself.
Yeah, I think that's why we said, Leslie and I talk about it's our dream. We know that there are some things that we have to do from the infrastructure before we can do that, which I do think that the goal was like fall of 2019. I'm optimistic, but it's not going to be something that is easy, but it's definitely something that is needed, especially to have the capacity to support more employees coming on board.
Okay, well, I appreciate then you letting us know that that may be coming down the pipe.
I just wanted to actually add two things. I mean, it's going to be a combination of our existing systems, looking at new needs that would improve and bring efficiencies to the departments, actually both finance and human resources. So it could be a combination of
I see.
actually building on existing systems or actually replacing old systems and integrating them with the new infrastructure we actually have. So I just wanted to point that out.
No, I
that it is-
appreciate that. That's very helpful, especially from where we're
Thank you for
sitting.
asking the question.
You're welcome. So again, thank you again for the report. And the only comment I'll leave you with is all the work that you're doing to really help our employees. I'd ask that you just communicate that to them so they know that we're doing what we can from your end to improve that. And I will now share that and continue to provide as much guidance or present them to you. Thank you.
Okay. And I just have one comment, which is about your moving forward section. I guess it is a question, because I noticed that you kind of slipped in this note. You said sort of you might need some help, and I take that to mean there may be budgetary implications to your plans. But I'm just curious.
The human resource information system, redesigning that would definitely have budget implications, but that's something that, you know, I see that I put fall 2018 because in my mind I'd love for us to start earlier. But I think the other things that we have as far as the classification and compensation, the market study would be in another 5 years, so that's something we need to plan for. As far as EMP job vacancy announcements, those are completed. We did recently receive the funding from the board to start the assistance and the clerical and the teaching updates, and so we will be looking in the future to finish with our support staff, our maintenance and our drivers, food services.
And then on the previous slide, these are sort of the nearer term plans. And, you know, you've talked quite a bit about this, the employee engagement stuff. I think it's really great. It is coming up quickly, or these dates are coming up quickly. Is there a way that we will get to find out how these things, get to see this stuff kind of in real time as opposed to, I don't know if you're going to come back to us in a year or 2 years, how often we have this briefing from you. But if these things are happening, I think we'd want to kind of keep track of it. So how will we get to see this?
I think that that's something that I'll continue to have conversation with Dr. Murphy about. I know that the first part of it is really, there's a component of his communication plan, but at the same time, we are also working on developing that framework. It's part of our Human Resources Department plan, so I'd be happy to, you know, continue to give updates and and provide that information. It's going to be a large-scale work, but we really are excited and we know we need it.
Great. Great work. Obviously, the board is very interested in this topic, which is why we spent so much time with it this
I
evening.
appreciate
But
it.
yes,
I
really,
appreciate
really,
it.
really great job. Great job to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So next is HR policy.
So, oh, yes, we will go on. I think, yes. So, yeah. We will go on then to our information items, and we have 5. The first is the revision of 2 school board policies. Dr. Murphy.
I believe I'm going right back to our folks in Human Resources. And is Ellen Kennedy, along with Dr. Murphy, presenting this?
It is. Oftentimes, I present our policies because I really do, like you, believe in making sure that our staff have a work-life balance. So on board nights, I present the policy, but since Ms. Kennedy is here, and this is a lot of work that she's done with Tara Wooldridge to update our employee assistance, but also to talk about our workplace violence, and since the order, they decided, well, we'll stay and we'll present tonight. So I appreciate them. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you. So the first slide, I think the first of the two policies addressed on the slide is the Human Relations EAP Policy 35.4.1. Oh, thank you. I thought someone did it for me. Not major changes to this, and this is really Tara Wooldridge's work, to be honest. It's on the 5-year cycle, so it was time to update it, and we've really done a lot more work with the PIP, which will be coming soon. But she just sort of expanded a bit, making sure it's clear what the EAP's role is in the school division. So it includes both assessment and referral, and then also a little bit more comprehensive in terms of sort of whole employee health and well-being issues. So that's that one. With workplace violence, really most of the work on this one has been in the PIP. We've imported a definition as a starting point related to workplace violence because we wanted to broaden it. And so now what we're hoping to do is make this a more proactive policy in terms of empowering our administrators to recognize and understand when it's sort of the broad nature of what could constitute a threat in the workplace, to make sure they're understanding and reacting and referring to EAP as necessary. And make sure we're sort of on top of and making sure we'd like it to be a preventive policy as opposed to what happens when one of these occurs. So that's the work here. The changes.
Okay, do we have speakers?
We have one speaker, Ms. Ingrid Gant.
Okay.
Good evening. Protocol already being established. I know this is an informational item, and Dr. Murphy was correct when she said we've been talking about this for a while. And Ellen can attest to us speaking about it on the Employee Advisory Committee. You've heard testimonies of people coming to the mic tonight talking about it. This is real. As much as we want to act as if this is not happening in our schools, it is. The sad part is a lot of people don't know where to go. So I commend this committee on talking about the real talk where people don't know where to go and trying to get our house in order so that we have a place where we can send them. But for me, I'm hurting because I see the faces of many employees who don't know where to go. And the only place they can go is back into that environment the next day. Everything in our world happens for a reason, and sometimes we don't understand. And my prayer is that we get this right and get it right soon. There's times when I cry because I want to tell them exactly what to do, but they're not bold enough to stand up for themselves to handle whatever's going on. So when you look at this and be able to act on this in a few weeks to a month, whatever, please know that you're acting on behalf of not just the 1,800 members of AEA, but the 8,000 employees that we have in our system. They really need some solutions on where to go. I see EAP being inundated with things that may happen, but I know they're up for the challenge. And I just urge you, when you're thinking about this and you're dialoguing about it, think of the people who are hopeless and feeling helpless right now. And they're living something daily, day in and day out. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Board colleagues, questions or comments? Ms. Talento.
I have some concerns on the workplace violence policy. So I had pulled up the draft that's posted on board docs, the red line, and what we're adding is, it states, according to the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, workplace violence is defined as any physical assault, threatening behavior, or verbal abuse occurring in the work setting. And I and then we follow it, and this is where my concern lies. We say it includes but is not limited to beatings, stabbings, suicides, shootings, rapes, near suicides, psychological traumas, such as threats, obscene phone calls, and intimidating presence, and harassment of any nature, such as being followed, sworn at, or shouted at. We're listing a lot of things that are, that no one should experience. And the concerns that I have specifically on this are the mention of suicides and near suicides. So I first, in order to try to understand, went to the website, the NIOSH website, and I found a definition similar to the first sentence of this, but I could not find anything that included the second sentence where we list. And then I searched the second sentence, and I found that on the OSHA website, the Occupational Safety, for those who don't know, occupational, what, someone said it.
Health and Safety Administration.
Yeah, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and I found it in a PowerPoint that they had presented, but I didn't look through their website. The concern I have is if someone committed suicide, don't have them with us any longer, and I don't know how an application of a policy would apply to that.
So the suicide is included because someone who is suicidal presents a possible workplace violence threat. And so it's trying to encourage that recognition. And also, of course, this is supposed to be we want a safe and respectful workplace. So this is encouraging administrators to recognize that someone who has expressed suicidal intention needs to be sent to EAP and addressed. Not because we want to discipline them, but because we want to help them. We want to make sure that they get the support they need, but also because that is a possible threat of workplace violence in and of itself. And what this policy says is you're trying to get a prompt and we're responsible for coordinating a prompt and appropriate response to any threat or act of violence. And so that is someone who is suicidal that does pose a threat to their own safety, but also possibly of others.
So, okay, so I think, thank you. I think it may be then the wording. If you're, then we need to say, well, quite frankly, from a policymaker's perspective, I'm concerned about the detail in the wording. And I think that we have other wording and I think this is maybe something that we can discuss as a board and discuss with HR, and I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to do it as an information item. But when I look at a policy, I'm trying to provide guidance from rules and guidance to the community that is affected by this policy. When we get so detailed, we run the risk of leaving something out, and we run the risk of not understanding something. And suicide is a mental health. Generally, a person who's suicidal is experiencing a mental health crisis. When you put suicide in a policy that has an application of policy that includes termination, I think there's a mixed message there. So I understand that if you have a person who attempts suicide in a work setting, it can create an unhealthy work environment. I could see how it could create instability and fear for safety. But I'm concerned about if we're going to put that in, we have to be very, very clear what the steps are to that. What happens if you attempt suicide at home? Are you a workplace hazard? It's not clear if this is at APS property. And so considering where we are right now with mental health in the country as a whole, I'm concerned about that wording, and I would like us to revisit it and maybe have something more generic or use the wording that was specifically provided by the National Institute for Occupational Safety. And I think we referenced something later on that really says something to the effect of if at any point an employee feels unsafe, and there's some other wording, and I apologize, I don't have my notes. But I just want to make that comment for discussion because I am concerned about that wording and how it may come back to affect us if we find ourselves in that situation.
We're happy to look at the wording, absolutely, and we'll do that and make sure that we've got a tight definition. I think it may be helpful to also share the draft PIP, because I think that will give more detail around how that would actually play out, because what is again contemplated is that person being referred to EAP for support. So,
okay.
if you want to add.
I'll just add a few comments. As a licensed clinical social worker with more experience than I care to have with workplace violence, the goal is not to be punitive, but to lay out a process where we can provide safety for all of our employees, the community. And unfortunately, people don't see suicide as an act of violence in many cases, which means it then becomes a private issue that we don't talk about. And if we don't talk about it, we can't do anything about it.
Okay.
And so that's why the goal was to be as comprehensive as possible to educate people about the need to address the issue. I've had experiences where managers will say, well, I didn't report that because he was only threatening to harm himself. Every life is valuable, and we have to educate people that this is important to talk about, to do something about it, and to be proactive. And so that was why we had the inclusion. We're certainly happy to look at the language. It is not designed at all to be punitive, but to raise awareness, provide education.
And thank you for that clarification, because I agree that but I think maybe it needs to be separated from then maybe a separate clause in the policy where we indicate that suicide will be considered an act of violence due to the threat of harm to self and those around you, and there'll be specific steps outlined in our implementation plan.
And
because
we actually do have more specifics in the
right,
PIP.
because I think when it is sitting in between stabbings and shootings, it's very difficult to understand that. And if you are a person who is experiencing abuse and it triggers, I don't know if trigger is the right word, but being abused can lead to things like depression, which can lead to things like suicide. And you're reading this, I just would like that clarity. So I just wanted to write that feedback.
Yeah, we're happy
Thank
to look
you.
at revising
Thank-
the language.
yeah.
That's not
So
a
thank you
problem.
for the discussion, and that was very helpful. And then if we're going to quote a website, we need to make sure we can find it easily.
So actually,
Yeah.
they did update their website. This actually was over a year ago when we started revising this
Okay.
policy.
Yeah, so that's great. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm told that we have to change the tape on the video. I know we have one more question on this item. We, of course, have other items to go to. Do you think we can fit it in, Miss Elliott? Should we break? I think we should. Okay, so sorry, we're going to have to ask you to stay through the tape change. Quick 5-minute break, and then we'll start right up again. Do I actually... everyone? Wait, where's Melanie? Oh, she's there.
Yes,
Okay, thank you for your patience, everyone. Ms. Valento, you finished? Okay, Ms. Van Doren has a question.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. And I have one question for you, one for Dr. Murphy. The first is on the Employee Assistance Program, just where are you located?
We are located
Let's
in
have a
the Marshall
commercial right
Building.
now.
We're in the Marshall Building, downtown Clarendon.
The which building?
Marshall Building.
The Marshall Building,
Across
which
from
is on.
Whitlow's Restaurant.
Great. It's also where New Directions is?
Absolutely.
Okay,
We're on
so
the bottom, and they're on the top.
great. Let's give some markers for folks, so thank you.
With free parking.
Excellent, excellent. The second question is, how many visits do you have a week from our employees?
It varies. It depends on the week. Some weeks we have a few, and some weeks we have many. It really depends. Issues tend to come in waves. We notice that the first of the year, people tend to come in kind of in droves because as the holidays are really good for some people, they're not so good for others. People tend to hold together through Thanksgiving and Christmas. The first of the year, we tend to see an uptick. When there are things going on like mid-year performance reviews, we see an uptick. Off the top, I could certainly get back to you with better data, but off the top, I can't tell you how many in a
Well,
week.
that's fine, and I would love the data, because I think to get a handle on that in a company or a organization like the school system, it's useful to know, because that can be a barometer for us. So in a year, do you have 10 employees? Do you have 100 employees? Do you have 1,000 employees?
It's about 5% of the population. And the issues range from stress and sleep issues to difficulties with work, family
That's
issues,
about 200.
elder care.
Okay. I'd love those numbers at some point, just, and maybe over the course of several years, just to see, as a barometer, how what that's like.
Happy to provide some
Thank you very
information.
much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job. Our next information item is, and a question for Dr. Murphy, yes.
Dr. Murphy, I'd made a request last week, and I just would like to know the status of it. There are policies that we have that come up that we're reviewing that we will be considering and then acting on. And it would be great, in the same way we have opportunities for the community to comment via Engage on other items, that on these topics, if there might be a policy tab where, let's say, employees who are listening to this might be able to just click on the and I'm not talking about every policy under the sun, but the ones that we're actively considering, where they could easily go in and click and say, I have a comment on that piece, so that we could see it. And what's more important to me is, given that staff is really doing the legwork on revising these policies, that they see those comments and they don't have to come first to the board, but rather come directly from, and you can see them and then we can see them, because that can help us get closer to the employee and the supervisor having the conversation. I'd like to cultivate that. So I asked about that last time. I see it hasn't happened yet. So I would just strongly encourage, and I'm probably going to keep asking, because I think it's worked in all the other venues that we're doing that Engage contacting. I think it's a great place for employees to just go in and drop in their comments.
And you're speaking of the, for instance, these two policies that we had this evening. In other words, put them up on Engage so folks have comments or input, and then once you folks
Then they're
take
done.
action, then they sort of recycle and they're out.
Exactly, and I know we have other ones that go on for a year, like the one-to-one or
Right.
the inclusion one.
Right.
That's a different kettle of fish. On the ones that are taking long to. these are
Basically,
short.
info action type of policies.
Exactly.
Okay. Let me speak to the folks in school and community, and I think it's a nice idea.
Okay, we will go on to our next information item, which is the final design for Yorktown internal modifications. Dr. Murphy.
All right, I think I'm going to turn to Mr. Chambers. He's been here. It's been a long evening, so the floor is yours, sir.
Good evening. We've had a very long, short process. We didn't have a lot of time to do it, but we had a lot of people involved in the process of working on Yorktown. Project introduction, I just wanted to mention this was identified in the 2017-26 CIP. This actually is the last of the projects of this type. Making more space within the existing space, and this is the last high school. The project overview, the goal is to add a minimum of 300 seats. It's to be completed by September of 2018, and $4 million of funding was made available. And the funding source was Capital Reserve. Project team, these are the people that worked on this. It was a very energetic group. They were very excited working together. There were a lot of ideas, and they worked through a lot of processes and how to make everything work. So it was a good experience. We're about 2/3 of the way through this schedule. You can see that where we are tonight is about 2/3 of the way down with the information, but we're going to be moving into, after the school board action, is getting contract documents out and issued, get them created and out and issued. Our goal being that we have materials ordered before the kids are out of school so that we can get the project done while they're not in the building. Final design strategies that we used in this that the committee worked with was to increase the classroom utilization to 6 to 7 periods per day. Provide flexible teacher workspaces outside of classrooms. That's what makes those classrooms available. The teachers can get out of the space and not use it for their planning periods. Capture underutilized spaces and convert to classrooms and workrooms. Also, we're looking at spaces that were designed even a few years ago for a specific purpose that really aren't used for that purpose anymore. Hence, like computer labs, et cetera, that are not used the way they were used when that building was planned. And then increasing functionality areas outside of the classroom. Basically trying to use more of the building for learning spaces. The final design, we actually increased the building capacity by 310 students from 1,879 to 2,189. We added a special ed suite on the first floor to consolidate services. This actually is workspace for the staff. Currently, they were spread out in different areas of the building. They never really were able to collaborate, so they can have professional collaboration, discussion on students. Also with this, there is some conference spaces where they can meet as groups, or they can meet with family and parents, but they used to be on other floors. Parents would check in, they wouldn't know where to go. They might be in different conference rooms, so they're going to it's a shared conference room, but it's going to be pretty much theirs. As well as some drop-in spaces. We created small workrooms and conference rooms throughout the building by repurposing spaces and flexible work nodes. Basically, these are drop-in spaces for an individual teacher to make a phone call, to do independent work, et cetera, while their classroom is being used or any other time that they may need that space. Provide counters with charging stations, really for the students, because they're always looking for places to plug in their phones, sitting on the floor. We wanted to find a place that could actually work. And in the gymnasium, adding divider curtains for increased functionality. Basically, splitting up the space with divider curtains so they can have more than one function going on at the gym at one time. Overall gain was 5 special ed workstations. That's the space downstairs that I was talking in the first floor. 5 administrative workstations, 3 meeting and lounge areas, special ed resource room, 2 workrooms, 4 drop-ins. And one thing that had been talked about from the beginning of the committee is a science classroom, and we didn't know where we were going to get that, but we were able to get a science classroom in, and 3 general classrooms were created or carved into the existing space. Just an example, there's some informal seating for students and or faculty to use, the drop curtain in the gym, the work nodes, space for staff and temporary people that don't have full-time places to lock up their belongings. Even substitute teachers might want to utilize some of these spaces. And then there's an example of a charging station. I don't know that how much you want me to go through the building. This is that special education space that was created. So this is that collaborative work area, and then these are the conference spaces that were created. This is actually a handicapped toilet room that is adjacent to the life skills. They didn't have one. That was kind of needed. Gymnasium, we added the drop curtains. One of the other things that's utilitarian is we're basically replacing the lockers. We didn't have enough lockers for the additional students. So instead of a 2-tier locker in the gym, it's going to be a 3-tier locker. So we didn't increase the floor space, but increase the locker space. Also for reducing parking in the exterior, because you might have more faculty and staff, we're providing an interior bike room, basically for TDM, to encourage bicycling to the building. On the upper floor, this would be the science classroom space. Again, these are different. This is a collaboration space for faculty to work, to go out of their classroom. This is the other green area is another classroom space. Keep moving here. On the upper floor, we took a computer lab and existing classroom space and made it a larger general classroom. That's this space here. And again, you can see all of the spaces, we're moving things around. So there's not much of the building we're not touching. As it works out, the construction cost estimate that's been worked out is $2,175,000. Soft costs are $1.5 million. We have a contingency because we don't know what we're going to necessarily find behind the walls when we get there, get the project started. So we have a budget of $4 million, and we're looking at an estimate of $4 million at this point in time. The recommendation that we would want to make would be to approve the general location extent of the internal modifications, to approve the new building capacity of 2,189 seats, reaffirm the $4 million in total funding available from the capital reserve, and to direct staff to solicit bids for the construction work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any speakers, Ms. Elliott?
Yes, we have one speaker, Mr. Jim Harris.
Okay.
This is the third recently constructed high school with too few classrooms for subsequent growth in student population. As you are aware, Abingdon School has 136 more seats as a result of a $32 million renovation and expansion. The owner of the apartment complex adjacent to Abingdon School will significantly increase the number of rental units through new construction, starting in about 2 years, including family-sized apartments. The school board and county board also recently approved a new Wilson School and Alice West Fleet School on the TJ Middle School campus. Approval of the architectural drawings for Wilson School and Fleet School indicates a large number of amenity spaces and socialization spaces. When schools are designed with too few classrooms, we pay twice. For expensive schools designed with too few classrooms, and a few years later, to repurpose existing spaces into more classrooms. So we've done that over and over and over again, Ms. Kananen, and we're going to do it again, most likely. I and my Abingdon school neighbors fully expect Abingdon will be at capacity in 2 years, and we can expect another insipid BLPC and PFRC planning process for more new classrooms. And who knows, more drop-off area, more parking spaces, a laundry list of things that are concomitant with new classrooms. We absolutely expect that within 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board colleagues, questions or comments? Ms. Van Dorn, you do have one? Yes.
First, I want to thank you very much. I love this. I think it is a great use of our funds. I think we are expanding the use of our existing space. 3 cheers. I hope we do it again and again and again until we maximize use of every space in the school. So thank you so very much for doing this and your innovative approach to it. We very much appreciate it. The one request I have is I wanted to ask you a series of questions like, where's the history suite? Where's the English suite? Where's the science suite? Because I know there aren't any, correct?
No, we
Right,
didn't.
okay.
add it, yeah.
So in our designing of the schools and in the thinking about inclusion, I would highly recommend that we not designate something the special education suite. I would like that changed on the plans. In general, I understand those have been called resource rooms, meeting rooms, and in my experience in the other high schools, they're simply an extension of the counseling office, their staff offices. So I would really like that to change on here, and I would like us to know that a room, is a meeting room, is a room that staff uses to do counseling or to meet with parents, not the special education room. We really, really, really have to stop doing that. We really, really have to stop doing that. But this is wonderful. Thank you very much. Please, can we work on all of our staff throughout the school system to think about how we label kids? Thanks.
Mr. Goldstein, did you have a question?
I do, thank you. Yeah, thanks. Jeff, can you go to slide 5, please? I really like slide 5 because it gives me a good understanding of what the steps are, the timeline, and it helps me explain to community members, you know, in detail. I don't have to explain in detail, I just show them the slide, what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and things like that. So thank you for that. But the one thing that I'm confused about is that acronym CIP. What does that mean in this context? Yeah.
It was a
And
planning
2
meeting.
and 3 and
I don't
4 and
remember.
5. Sorry?
I forget what the acronym was for. It was the planning group is what it was. It's the group that the committee that we had listed there, and I don't remember what the.
On the third
there's so many
slide there,
acronyms that
fourth
we had,
slide.
like- It might have been.
Okay. All right, it's got nothing to do with the capital improvement plan.
No,
Right, okay.
no. It was their internal committee, and that's what
Okay.
they named it. But I think all the schools that we've done, every committee had their own personality and took on their own acronyms, and we try to work through that and give them the resources they need to make these decisions, and that's how we get to where we got to. And all 3 schools have similar results or same results with additional capacity, but they all got to it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, that's okay, because they've got different characters, and the folks constituting those committees had different, preferences and stuff like that. That's fine. Yeah, no, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I suspect you may be sticking around for, no? Not you again? Oh, let's see. The next information item then is the determination to use construction management at risk delivery method for the Education Center renovation. I thought that was
I
going to
really
happen.
wanted to watch ice skating tonight.
Look who's here.
Dr. Murphy.
It's a disease.
Okay. This is determination to use construction management at risk method for the Education Center, this building's renovation. We recently just did this with the READ project, the changes in the laws with regard to using the construction management risk, or the CMR, requires that we identify that that's what we're going to do before we start the process. Before that, we would do the RFP process and then bring it to you, but now we have to talk about the process. Project overview, in the 2017-26 CIP, we included funding for additional secondary seats. And then on June of 2017, the school board voted to renovate the Ed Center to about 500 to 600 seats. So we're looking preliminary schedule pending the approval of the the 2019-2028 CIP. We're looking at design and permitting from June of 2018 to August of 2019. We still have to determine the construction schedule itself. Using a construction manager at risk procurement method for the project is permissible under the VPPA because the project exceeds $10 million. You have licensed architects on staff, contract licensed architects and engineers with professional competence to assist. Purchasing resolution contains written procedures governing this selection and evaluation and award to CMR contracts. The implemented procedures and documentation is consistent with the procedures Commonwealth of Virginia's Department of General Services for using the CMR, and the purchasing agent has determined that the competitive sealed bidding is not practical or fiscally advantageous for this project. Essentially, we are currently utilizing the CMR at risk, as you may well remember, for Wilson, the middle school, new middle school at the Stratford site, the Alice West Fleet Elementary, tenant improvements at Syfax, and new elementary at Reed site, and it seems to be working very well. John had mentioned the other day that we haven't finished a project with the CMR, but we're getting close on Syfax, and it's going extremely well. So we're pretty happy with the procedure. CMR advantages: competitive negotiations, experience, competence, and price from the contractors instead of just the low bid guy. We've been finding we're getting a better quality contractor. We actually, on the fleet site, got a huge compliment from the county with regard to how nice the site is, and they've never seen a school project. In fact, they want the state to come and look at it because it's so well done. So CMR is engaged at the early stages, helps resolve misunderstandings. We avoid errors and omissions early before they become a cost, achieving timely completion with reduced potential for change orders. There's a guaranteed maximum price. We negotiate that not to exceed price, reduces the potential for change orders as we do the construction. There's a much more cooperative spirit for the construction phase, so it's a team working instead of an adversarial relationship that you have with the bid build. And the CMR gains a sense of owning the design and contributing, so they feel like they're part of the process, and they're responsible for what may be missed. We are recommending to approve the use of the CMR procurement method for the Ed Center, and we would like you to direct the staff to begin the competitive negotiation selective process once we had the AE on board.
Okay, and we do not have speakers on this item. Questions, comments? Brilliant. Okay. Let's see what happens next. Our next information item is the Randolph Window Replacement Phase 2 Contract Award. Dr. Murphy, Mr.
Chadwick.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Good evening. So I want to point out that last summer we replaced about half of the windows at Randolph, and you may recall that the previous windows had black frames and very dark black glass. So in changing them, I believe we've changed the appearance of the building and making it look happier. I'm sort of looking at engaging and challenging students, but a building with black windows and black glass does not seem like something that's particularly friendly or appealing or engaging that you would want to go into. So we made the change to clear glass. It does have coatings on it, so it performs well environmentally. And clear anodized aluminum windows, which actually reflect and sparkle in the sunshine and make the building more friendly and I think more happy. You may remember we did that at the Career Center, where we had brown windows and brown glass. It didn't make quite as much difference as it has here. So this is a replacement of windows at Randolph Elementary. to improve internal conditioning, reduce energy costs, and I think more importantly than any of that, to really improve the appearance and appeal of the building. We completed the first phase of this last summer, in which we replaced approximately 60% of the old windows for $367,000. And we're now ready to proceed with the balance of the project for a proposed cost of just around under $288,000. Included in that, actually, I think, is a separate project during spring break. We will be putting windows into an art room that doesn't have any windows. And we think that's something really important to do, that art rooms really, really ought to have windows. Since the cumulative total of all this work will now exceed $500,000, we have come to the school board to request approval prior to proceeding with phase 2. And we recommend that the school board approve additional use of bond funding for $287,966 to award phase 2 of the Randolph window replacement project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe we do not have speakers, so any questions on this item? Mr. Goldstein?
Thank you. Where's the bond funding? What's the source of the bond funding? What year was it? I mean, it's already been approved, right? Okay.
Yes, we're
It's
not able to proceed unless it has.
Yeah, it's not upcoming. Okay. I think that was it. Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Talento?
I just want to clarify what Mr. Goldstein's saying for myself. And I think we've said this before, Leslie, so I apologize for the repetitive question, but I think by next year I won't ask again.
Should always ask.
All right, there might be community members who don't know. That's right. Okay. So we have bond funding for projects like this, maintenance projects.
Yes.
And we have some money from that bond that has not been used that will be applied to this.
Yes.
So what we are approving is the project because it went over $500,000.
Correct.
But we're not approving using money from some source that is not already being applied to this type of work. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
A+.
Okay, thank you very much. You almost make me want to buy some windows, Mr. Chadwick.
Pardon?
That was a good sales job on windows. You make me want to buy some windows.
Everything counts.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. The final information item we have is the contract amendment for construction management advisor services for the Abington project. Dr. Murphy and Mr. Chambers.
Mr. Chambers?
Good evening again. This is for the CMA services. This is our construction manager advisor at the Abington building. Basically, in June of 2015, the school board approved the contract to Hiri International for the construction management advisor. Contract amendment is required for additional CMA services due to expanded project schedule and complexity, not known at the original award. School board approval is required since the proposed contract amendment, when combined with the previously approved contract amendment, increases the original contract amount by more than 25%. If you recall, this is a very complicated project. We ended up with 9 phases. We actually extended an extra 6 months of the project, and we were almost done, and we basically got frozen out, so we essentially need their services for a longer period of time. At one point, we had 3 additional people from their staff on the project because of the complexities that we were running into and materials we were encountering on the site as we were working with the project. So it's some additional extended time, and we really want to utilize the consultant's knowledge of the project to finish it out, rather than have to relearn it or have somebody else spend more time than they would. The original contract award was $949,816. Previously approved amendments, that was for a lot of the additional personnel on site was $313,317.67. So the current fee is $1,263,133.67. So we're looking at, for closing out the project, maximum not to exceed the $89,600, which would take us to $1.352733.67. We were recommending to approve the proposed contract amendment funded by the project's contingency. The contract amendment is incorporated into the current funding available, approved by the school board, so no increase in funding is necessary.
Very much. And Ms. Elliott, do we have a speaker?
one speaker, Mr. Jim Harris.
So, Ms. Kainanen, this is a contract amendment to increase the payment for construction management services for Abington School construction management by $89,600 to $1.35 million. As you know, I and my neighbors who live close to Abington School were very concerned about the consequences of Abington School renovation and expansion as related to us in our homes, to the extent we hired legal counsel who represented us during PFRC and BLPC meetings, school board meetings, county board meetings, and through construction. Please be aware, Ms. Kainanen, that I and my neighbors who live close to the school are very unhappy about the number of use permit violations.
Mr. Harris, I do want to remind you that we do ask you to address the full board in our comments. It's part of our speaker guidelines.
Okay, you're the
Thank
chair,
you.
right? You're responsible, right? Of use permit violations that occurred repeatedly during Abington School construction, ranging from hazmat, asbestos, very, very serious, to repeated parking violations. So we were assured by them that Abington would not be another ash lawn. Again, this is an increase of $89,600 to a total of $1.35 million for construction management services. So my neighbors asked me to ask you tonight, what did APS get for $1.35 million in construction management services? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board colleagues, questions and comments? Okay. Hearing none, I think we've made it through our information items. Thank you very much, Mr. Chadwick and Mr. Chambers. For those, we have one. Oh, we're not done with construction, are we? We have one action item tonight, the construction contract award for Randolph Elementary School. Dr. Murphy.
Yes, Mr. Chadwick, I'd just like to go back to the number 4 information item with the Randolph window replacement and just comment that the changes there have been very positive, as you highlighted, and I think it does set a different tone and aspect to the school. So just to thank you for that. This item is just an action item. I think you have just a quick update or single slide to sort of summarize before the board takes action.
I sent it. Okay. Yeah, this is a summary sheet. That's fine. So the board will take the following actions for modernization at Randolph Elementary School, which will be to award a construction contract to Shapiro and Duncan for $4,744,000, to approve the proposed total project budget of $6.2 million, and approve use of available HVAC roofing and infrastructure bonds to fully fund the project. We presented the proposed actions as information on February the 1st, and the current recommendation matches what was submitted for the information item. And the recommendation is to approve.
Excellent. And I do not believe we have speakers. May I have a motion? We will have discussion after having a motion.
So moved. Oh, you do? Okay, good. I didn't see you had a motion. Go for it.
Mr. Goldstein?
Thank you. So for the construction contract award for Randolph Modernization, I move the board approve the construction contract award for Randolph Modernization.
Second.
Okay. Before we vote, is there any discussion? Mr. Goldstein?
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a few things. I'll be brief. When we saw this 2 weeks ago, we learned that the bid came in sufficiently low that we could add alternate bid packages. Is that what they're called?
Yes, there were some alternates that were bid to manage the scope of the project within the funding available, and we were fortunate with a bid that came in less than we had anticipated, so we were able to accept all of the alternates.
And when I spoke to Jeff the other day, he said that, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we approve this tonight, that you wanted to get started on some of these alternate bid packages as soon as tomorrow.
I do not have the schedule on that. I'm not sure that we're able to do that right away. Did Mr. answer the question?
Or soon, possibly.
Certainly over the summer, but it is a 2-summer project because given that school has to remain in operation, it will take us 2 summers to complete the work.
The HVAC part, yes.
Yes.
I understand, but some of the other,
The alternates are all part of the HVAC. It's a mechanical contract is what they're doing. Basically, it was the notice to proceed would be given as soon as the contract is written, as early as the next day.
okay.
That's what the note we were saying, and you're talking the note from the FAC or the conversation.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, okay, I didn't.
Yeah, that was a
So-
notice to proceed.
So
Yes.
clearly, the most important thing here is not to disrupt ongoing operations of the school.
Of course. Yeah, I didn't fully realize what you were talking about. Okay, so, thank you. I'm delighted that we've actually had the 3 items on Randolph tonight. The reappointment of Dr. Snyder as the principal, the window replacement item, and now the action item on the HVAC. So, as you know, this is, Randolph's probably the school that has been renewed, the oldest school in the renewal cycle. And so a lot of this stuff is long needed. In fact, the HVAC problem has been around since my kids were there in the late 90s. But I do want to say thank you to you and for pushing this forward, continuing to push it forward, recognizing the need, and to my colleagues for approving this, which I assume is going to happen as soon as I stop talking, which I've now done. So, thank you.
That was your conclusion.
That was it.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Chadwick. Thank you. And board colleagues, any new business? Hearing none, we are adjourned.